Hello, everyone. Let me spotlight. Let's see here. Hello, hello, hello. Hope everyone is doing well. So sorry for not I was not feeling right. Um yeah, last weekend was really bad. I was like barely functioning. I'm still recovering. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna tune in from bed. Um yeah. So I've just my health isn't that great. The COVID definitely did a number on me. And with the combination of immunotherapy starting back up, yeah, it's been rough. So, um, yeah, I'm just feeling like so overtired. And I was having trouble keeping food down. So, so yeah, it's been rough. So I'm so sorry, everyone, um, for not being able to uh yeah, carry out the sessions, but thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in today. Um, so being that it's President's Day, so this tends to be when folks are kicking off. For those of you that might be seed starting, it's when everything kind of starts to get underway. And so it reminded me of all the seed scams. And I said, yes, let me actually do that class here. Um, because there are so many rampant. And even last night when I was looking at um Facebook Marketplace just to see if I saw any odd seed scams. Like there are literally people trying to sell this. So they're saying that this is some type of flower. So with the rise of AI, this is um this is definitely getting a lot crazier. This is not a real plant. This is fake. Um but they're charging $6 with $4 shipping for 10 seeds of a flower that is supposed to apparently come out um looking like a big white fluffy cat. And this is not true. Not true at all. And you'll just see a bunch of these types of scam listings. And I kind of wanted to show you how you can navigate that type of thing. Especially there are houseplant seeds that you can purchase. Uh, and so sometimes people want to because okay, spring is coming, right? Definitely want to start considering that. And then only to find out that, wait, hold up. Um, there's a lot to consider, right? And where do you actually buy your seeds? So just wanted to take you through a little overview of spotting these seed scams and trying to be an informed consumer, because if you're going to be spending your your funds, right, you want to make sure that um you're actually getting what you would like to do, right? What you actually want and what you're trying to spend your money on, and not some type of scam. So let me see here. Here we go. So welcome again, and good morning, everyone, and good afternoon or good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. So spotting seed scammers. So, um, so why is it? Right? Like what's the issue? Um, why is it that this is even it, why are houseplant seeds um kind of houseplant hobbyists are very vulnerable to these types of scams. And so why is it that getting these houseplant seeds proves to be so difficult? Like, why are we kind of set up not necessarily for failure, but for that, you know, we're kind of, we have some odds against us in terms of this, right? So one big reason is it's really not as accessible. So houseplant seeds aren't necessarily as accessible. One, um, really the seeds that people are trying to purchase and that are available at larger scale are flower varieties, things like to put in our gardens, um, like things like ground cover, food crops, whether that's fruits or vegetables. Um, that's what's really highly available because that tends to be what people are looking for. It's much more specialized to try to find houseplant seeds. Um, so they're not, it's not something necessarily that you can walk into like a Home Depot or a Lowe's and be able to purchase seeds for them, right? It's something you would have to go find through me potentially even a private seller. We'll talk about how you're going to find them, or a much more specialized seed business. And a big issue that folks may not consider is that there are a lot of these houseplants that aren't even grown by seed. They have long been grown through just cuttings. A lot of them are just clones of one another, quite honestly, like pothos. So pothos, based on my knowledge, it has never flowered in captivity, like in a domesticated setting. Um, it's I think the last time that a scientist saw a pothos um in flower was like in the 90s in the wild. So it's very difficult to find, let's say, actual epiprenum seeds. Like that's just not something you would just typically find. And most of the pothos that we see in stores, these are all propagated by cuttings or tissue culture. So tissue culture is on the rise for those of you that don't know what tissue culture is. So it's another form of asexual reproduction. So just like with cuttings, where you take a section of the plant, and now this doesn't work with all plants, but you take a section of the plant with a node, and so that growth kind of activates, and now you have a whole other plant. But it's a genetic, genetic clone. It's identical genetically to the mother plant. So this is something that a lot of folks will do, especially to maintain varieties. So let's say you have a pothos. We'll keep using the pothos, but you have a pothos, and all of a sudden it's like a green, emerald pothos, and out of nowhere it starts to put out this gorgeous, like white, really creamy, beautiful variegation. And you're like, whoa, I want to grow more of this. So you might isolate that vine so it starts to grow, and then you continue to cut it and to propagate it more. And then that's how you end up, isolating what is considered a sport mutation. So when something odd comes off of your plant like that people can cut, so that's usually referred to as a sport. Um, so it's something really cool. You're like, hey, I like this. I want to make more of it. And you do that. Now with tissue culture, it's along the same vein, but it's much more in a scientific, sterile setting. So whereas you would take your pothos into the kitchen, maybe, take a pair of scissors. Of course, I always suggest to sterilize your scissors because you can cross contaminate your plants. But you take your scissors and you cut it, you put it into a little glass bottle and wait for those roots to come, so that's much less sterile in comparison to tissue culture, where a piece of the mother plant would be cut, and then basically it's taking that growth, those cells, and then putting them into a growth medium. So it's like a jelly called agar that's like highly nutritious, and then it makes little clones. It makes little plants, and you can now take let's say a stem of this one plant, and then now you can make like 20 little ones. Whereas with a cutting, you would cut the vine, wait for it to grow. It grows a leaf at a time. Little by slowly, the vine starts to grow. You cut it, so it's a much larger scale, but it's done in very like sterile settings. Now, people can do tissue culture at home if you have the proper equipment and you follow the proper like sterile protocols. Um, you can do it at home, so it's not impossible, but it's definitely something that's it's being done at larger scale in laboratory settings. And quite honestly, for a lot of folks, it's a lot cheaper because you're not using soil, you're not watering, because this nutritional jelly, the agar, has everything you need. So these different companies will fine tune that nutritional kind of medium, and then that's all that they're going to need. It's a clean glass bottle with a top, like a jar basically, or tubes. A lot of them are test tubes, um, and nutritional medium, and that's it, really, and lighting. But they don't really have to worry about maintaining humidity, let's say, for the entire laboratory because everything is sealed. And it's not until the plants are up to a size where they are ready to be transferred into, some type of growth medium, uh, that they would have to worry about that. But a big chunk of it is just it's a lot cheaper to kind of start. And there are a lot of tissue culture companies right now that are actually foregoing that last step. What they're doing is that they are selling the plants in that state, in that tissue culture, and they're leaving it upon the consumer to then, if you're going to transfer it, you kind of deal with the last part. We did kind of the beginning. So it's much cheaper for them and they make a lot more. So for instance, we have a plant store by us here in Astoria, NYC Succulents, where they're selling a bunch of tissue culture plants. Brian actually bought quite a few. I've been having my snowdrift is growing. I think it's about ready for me to take it out. I will film that and hopefully it will do okay. I mean, it's going to be my first time ever trying that. So I'll make sure I record it so that everyone can see how I did it. And then if it goes horribly wrong, I can try to go back and see where I may have gone wrong, and then try not to do that in the future. But in the grand scheme of things, I think I paid like $15 or $20 in comparison to folks, who will purchase like these larger plants for like hundreds of dollars. And yeah, and then it doesn't work out. Brian actually bought a bunch. He already had a albo in tissue culture, which he is trying to transfer over. But he bought 3 new ones, and so I know one of them is a Spiritus Sancti in tissue culture. I can't remember what the other two were. I think one was a Thai, and I can't remember what the third one is. But he is getting very much into tissue culture plants. So yeah, so a lot of folks now are just growing them like that and then selling. So for them, they take a very small little chunk of the plant, very tiny, and they can make dozens. They can take one stem and make dozens of plants and then sell each, let's say, for 15-20 bucks. That for them is yeah, it's a lot. In comparison to folks that are propagating. Now, you see a lot of discourse, folks saying, oh, tissue culture plants aren't as not vibrant, but resilient, or they're not as healthy as other types of house plants. But then, I beg to differ. I'm very much more in the camp of, well, I mean, the plant that's a cutting is a genetic clone, and it's very much the same situation. So it's just it's the same in terms genetically. It's the same deal. Yes, how they grow them is different, but I don't think that definite, and we've had tissue culture plants in the industry, so many plants that we have come to love and have become staples in the houseplant community have been tissue cultured for a very, very long time, and nobody has seen any issues. So I don't necessarily think that they're weaker. Um, but all this being said, you can see there's a lot of different ways, right, that people are making more houseplants to sell, that these nurseries are propagating, and and not all of them are doing this from seed. So it's not surprising then that you're like, whoa, I actually can't find seeds for this one plant, this house plant that I want to grow. So you really do end up having to really do your research and kind of dig around for it, because since there's so many other options available, seeds don't tend to be the first one, and so this kind of makes them a little scarce, to the consumer. So another thing to consider is the legalities. So a lot of varieties and even plants that are hybrids, they have been patented, or they're like licensed, where only that company can propagate them. For any of you who may have ever purchased, for instance, a holiday cactus, so a Christmas cactus, Thanksgiving cactus, or an Easter cactus, you might see that there is a little tag in there that calls them zygo cactus. And this is a line that's being created by this company that they basically have a patent on that variety, and it's illegal to technically propagate those, to then split that plant up and take cuttings and things like that. Of course, people aren't going to come after you if you're propagating in your own home. But it's more so when people start to propagate them and for sale, or to try to sell them as if it's their own variety. Um, and so that's where you kind of run into the issues. But there's a lot of plants that where they're like legally their genetic code is locked into a certain company, and so they don't want to share the seeds. They don't want to share any any way of you kind of starting them and maybe making your own hybrids using that plant, right? Not going to say it doesn't happen, because you can definitely get some type of plant that maybe does flower for you. You end up crossing it. So people still, of course, have the ability to do it. But that doesn't necessarily, but you could get in trouble. And another thing too is that some of these plants, the way that they are, their genetics are kind of put together, they are meant to be sterile. So sometimes they actually won't even produce seeds, because they just can't reproduce. They will produce a flower, but nothing will come of that, right? So and I mentioned there's no specific brand names, big brand names selling houseplant seeds, kind of like at large scale. That's unfortunately, we're not there. Um, and also a lot of these it's very difficult to also harvest these seeds from a lot of these houseplants. As I mentioned, like with pothos, it's something that you don't see necessarily flower in captivity. Brian and I actually did see recently on TikTok that somebody uploaded an AI image of a pothos. I'm trying to see if I actually took, I think I did. I did. I took a screenshot. Hold on, let me stop the share for 2 seconds just so you could see. So it says, when your pothos finally flowers. Number one, that is not a pothos. This is an AI generated plant based on the shape, I would even say it looks more like a philodendron than a pothos. Um, Number two, I know for a fact that even if a pothos, let's say, were to flower in the wild, it would have to be a substantial size. So a lot of plants need to reach maturity and need to be a certain size before they will even flower. So that's no, it's not going to flower while being a tiny little hanging pot. And then the flowers supposedly that it generated have these very, you see, they look very much more like spider plant flowers. And if you know about the genetics and the family that pothos comes from, they're related to peace lilies, to monstera, to anthuriums. Now, what do anthurium flowers look like? Nothing like this. So they all have, you know, the spade, it's the space. Um, so basically, if you think um of a peace lily flower, right? It's you have basically it's like wrapped. It's a completely different structure. And so these AI photos though are going rampant. And so many people were in the comments saying, "Oh, that's so beautiful. I can't wait until mine flowers," and things like that. Um, when this isn't even the correct plant, and that's not how that plant flowers. That is absolutely not that is not the case. So, but people will see the image and assume that it's real and then go ahead with it. Um, and then also some of these house plants too, some of them are also what they call dioecious. So sometimes there's a male flower and a female flower, and they're two different, so there's on two different plants. So there's a male plant and a female plant, and you would have to have both of those present in order to cross pollinate and actually, have to continue the pollination process. I mean, and then to actually produce viable seeds. And also, sometimes, humans with their little paintbrush, it's not enough for some of these plants. They may have a very specific pollinator that you just can't mimic, right? We can't recreate that process. So it's very, very difficult. um, if you're really looking for seeds though, try to really do your research. Try your local botanical gardens. Speak to like the horticultural staff there. Say, hey, I would actually like to connect with the horticultural director. I'm looking for some very specific seeds, and I'd love, to kind of pick their brain if that's possible. Uh, Try horticultural societies. There's a lot of like plant clubs that you can actually find out about. See if your town or your county even might have some type of horticultural society or horticultural club. And then sometimes, if you get very specific, there might be like a cactus club in your area, let's say, and you're really looking for certain varieties of cactus. And you just happen, you can really kind of, there's also like orchid societies, for instance. You're looking for something very, very specific. And so, trying to see if there are some like local kind of groups in your area. And sometimes they open up events. Like there's a succulent society here in New York City, where they do trades, but they also have like events where they have like pop-ups where you can go and buy these plants that are being sold by the members that you would never be able to find like at a local plant shop, right? It's just they're very specific varieties that these folks have collected and grown from seed themselves. And it's not something that you're going to just be able to find. It's very niche. So if you're looking for something very specific, check out your local groups. There will honestly be so many amazing finds, and you'll also meet really amazing people along the way. Plant people are always awesome. And then another consideration to really kind of uh hold on to is some of these seeds, like I said, can't happen in like domestic, situations. Um, and even with a greenhouse with lights and humidity gauges and all that, it still might be really, really difficult to get certain species of houseplants to flower, or to reproduce effectively. And so sometimes the only way to get those seeds to also bring in some genetic diversity is a poaching. So some of these seeds might be illegally harvested, and being taken out of their actual native environments. And so you want to be very, very mindful as to where you're purchasing these seeds from. So just a joke here, but these are not the seeds that you are looking for. We're big Star Wars fans here. My husband and I. So I had to throw that in there. Um, but here's just an example. So, Monstera deliciosa, very common house plant now. But a lot of people want to sometimes grow their own. And you can absolutely do so. But if you go online, Facebook Marketplace, eBay, you will see that there's so many um, sellers of seeds for these plants. But when you actually look at the seeds, or you receive the seeds, I should say, what you end up getting is grass seeds. So this is a very common ploy, especially when it's too good to be true and it's like 100 seeds for $5, something like that. This is not realistic. These seeds, unfortunately, will be a little bit more pricier. So, still accessible, but you can't get that large of an amount that cheap. So, you're probably looking at sets of like 10 or 15 seeds. So definitely not like 100 seeds for $5. That's just not that's not going to be real. And so what people end up doing is they end up purchasing them, they get these fake grass seeds, and they start to grow them, and they're very, very disappointed. So it's very important also to see just what the seeds look like, right? So grass seeds, it's a very different shape, versus the actual true seeds of the Monstera deliciosa that you can see here. And this also happens a lot with succulents. So succulents, are very cute and have become very popular, especially these last few years. So many people, there's just so many varieties. And I think social media has definitely kind of made this even, it's a big bubble right now. Now the true seeds of lithops are super teeny tiny. Think like poppy seeds, super, super small. However, when you try to purchase online, and you will see a lot of like rainbow colored succulents and things like that online, these are fake. And what they're probably selling you are something like clover seeds. That tends to be the more often than not, that's the one that they're selling you. They might even be selling you mustard seeds. They're way too large. They're definitely not true lithops seeds. And so I just wanted to show you a couple of examples. For here is a Japanese maple. Now, this Japanese maple is a bonsai. So a bonsai does not just it's not a so how do I say, it doesn't just sprout and grow as a bonsai. So a bonsai is an actual practice. It's an art form of basically keeping these trees miniaturized, through really manipulating the growth. It's by cutting the roots. Roots are cut continuously. They are even use like wire and things to really manipulate the thickness of the trunk, how the plant is growing. It's very much manipulating the entire shape and growth of this plant. So it does not just grow and stay tiny. So that's one big thing. If they're selling you seeds that say bonsai seeds, It's not true. Uh, so this is something you actually have to do over time to keep that small. Now, let's say they're saying it's a bonsai seed, but it's actually just, it's Japanese maple. You'll get a Japanese maple tree, but it's going to grow into a tree. Of course, there's different varieties. It might be, there are dwarf Japanese maple trees, but it's not like this kind of size. We're talking a couple feet. um, this is something you would actually have to work to get to keep that small. And what do the tree seeds of maple trees look like? And um, so these are samaras, and they they look like little wings. Now, not all maples have the double. Sometimes they have one. But this is that overall look, because they are meant to kind of helicopter through the air, get picked up by the wind. But what a lot of folks were receiving were things like mustard seeds instead. So it's a totally, you could just see, and especially look at the advertisement as well if they show pictures of these supposed seeds, right? To make sure, okay, that is not a maple seed. So that is, yeah, don't purchase that. Same thing here with Phalaenopsis. So Phalaenopsis orchids. Phalaenopsis orchids are probably the most popular orchid that you can get as a house plant. They are readily available. Um, it's something that you can purchase in grocery stores. It's the most like prolific, I have to say, in the hobby is the Phalaenopsis orchid. Now, in terms of actually growing your own, though, so true orchid seeds are super, super small. And they do have to be germinated in very specific ways. So this is not a type of seed that you would just put into soil and expect to grow. In the wild, a lot of these orchids, their seeds actually have to bond with mycelium, so basically with fungi, in order to survive, germinate, and grow. So this is not something where it just needs a little bit of substrate. It has very, very specific needs for it to grow. This has been, over time, it has become much more accessible, and there's been very successful germination done by just regular people in their homes, but it's a very specific process, type of substrate, type of needs that you're going to have to do in order to germinate these. So unfortunately, it's not something that you're going to see. It's because it's so difficult, right? It would make sense that it would probably be a little bit more expensive. The whole in-depth process would be outlined in the listing, kind of like, this is how they would grow. If you're seeing something that it's like 100 orchid seeds, for $2 or something like that. So that's not necessarily, that's not true. So what you might end up receiving are fake aster seeds. And so these are things like asters are the same family as sunflowers and daisies, echinacea, so like coneflowers. So these, it's definitely not what you're looking for. The larger size, completely different plant. So just keep that in mind. A lot of these plants, it's much more difficult to grow them, so it tends to be just it's a little bit more expensive. So it's not something you're going to see like in Facebook Marketplace, unless it's a very niche seller who just happens to go, you know what, I'm going to post up on Facebook Marketplace. It's a very rare occurrence, but sometimes those people are actually legit. But you do have to kind of engage with them to see that. And now just some outright scams, like absolute scams. If you see seeds for variegated monstera, for instance, where they're saying, 50 seeds for $5 or something like that, that's just no. So this, they're with Thai constellations, they're made through tissue culture. So that's not something you're going to be able to get seeds for at this time. In terms of Monstera albo, it's an example of unstable variegation. So this is a mutation that's happening. It's being propagated via cuttings. This isn't something necessarily that you would be able to collect those seeds at, even if, let's say, it did flower for you and it did produce fruits and you got seeds, all those seeds might end up coming up regular. They're just all green. um, it's not, this is not something that's necessarily hereditary in that sense. Now, could you buy 100 Monstera deliciosa seeds, and out of those 100, maybe in that off chance, one of them actually germinates and ends up that it has a genetic variety, like a genetic mutation that happens to give it some variegation? That can happen. It's a very rare occurrence, but it can totally happen. But if you're prepared to grow that many seeds, but it's not necessarily something that is kind of predetermined, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna make seeds, and we're definitely gonna get some variegation from these types of plants. So Monstera albo seeds, don't even waste your money. Another thing that I've seen come up on Facebook, and I've seen it come up like on Amazon, are seeds for grafted cacti. And it's very confusing. Um, that, so grafted cacti, they have it in their name. They are grafted. So they are essentially a Frankenstein plant. So somebody took the time to, this is a practice where you take a scion, which is the top part of the plant, some type of succulent or another type of cactus that cannot uh, grow on its own. So basically, it's usually due to a color variation. It can't produce its own chlorophyll, so it essentially needs to parasitize the root, what they call, so it's the scion and the oh my gosh, the second, it's not the root base. It's coming to me, but but basically the base structure, that is what is producing the chlorophyll and feeding the parasite, the scion that's sitting on top of it. So it's doing all the work for two plants because it's trying to keep itself alive and it's trying to keep the scion alive. And rootstock. There we go. I was like, it's root something. Rootstock. Sorry, I'm out of it. But the yeah, so the rootstock. And so the rootstock is working double. So it's trying to keep itself alive and trying to provide resources to that scion because it's stealing its own resources. So that's not something you can grow. You would have to do the process of grafting. So yeah, it's completely two different specimens that are being combined. So it's actually being cut, and there's different processes. Some people use some type of glue. Some people will bind the plants with rope or tape until it fuses. So until the wounds healed and they actually fuse to one another. Now, in terms of longevity, these grafted cacti, like the moon cacti, they typically live like 1 to 2 years. If they're having, access to a lot of sun, so that rootstock can produce, enough chlorophyll for them both. Now, the top scion can die, and you can just remove it and keep the bottom part, and it'll keep growing. You can totally do that. However, if the base dies and the scion is of a variety that can't survive on its own, so it's like all yellow or all red, for instance, it will die as well because it will not be able to produce its own nutrition. So it won't survive, unfortunately. Here's just an example. So this looks like a gymnocalycium. Um, And so they are putting it on a base of something that appears to be possibly like dragon fruit, something like that. But basically, that is what is happening when grafted cacti are being put together. So they're being sliced so that they have like open wounds, and then they're being connected, very much Frankensteining, and they're being connected. And then once they heal, their tissues bind together, and yeah, it will actually form a relationship in which the top part, it's not symbiotic because the bottom part is the rootstock isn't getting anything from the scion. So it's very much a one-way relationship here, but it is, they do actually connect, which is really interesting, right? Especially like two plants of like two different species. So it's a very cool process, but it's not something you can get from seeds. So if you're seeing people selling you these seeds, and they're marketing, oh yeah, buy your moon, because they're also called moon cacti. Buy your moon cactus. That's not how you get moon cactus. Oh, why did it do that? Here we go. Hold on 1 second. There we go. So another issue we see, and which I think is going to get a lot worse now that there's AI openly available, is photo manipulation. So there are so many. So for instance, rainbow tomatoes, that's not a thing. And you're able to actually find the original photo and you see how it was edited to make it look like there's these rainbow colored tomatoes. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Everybody, I mean, rainbows obviously are very attractive. It's very cool. And so the thought of growing a plant that would produce rainbow fruits like that, of course, is very appealing. But unfortunately, it's not, this is not the case. Um, and so you will see this across a lot of, especially places where you can purchase um, things really cheap like Alibaba or Wish. These listings are rampant on there. So please keep this in mind. Especially for folks that really are into plants, you will get like those ads targeted to you. And some of these images are just insanely outlandish, like the ones that I showed at the beginning, of the plants that look like fluffy white cats, and they're being, it's being advertised that they're flowers that, and it's not. It's a very obvious fake picture. But some people will see that and not realize and go, oh wow, that's a really cool variety, and end up purchasing it. So don't fall for these traps. Um, and then I added, there aren't any real rainbow plants, and I do want to explain. So in terms of fruits, so there are certain plants that will produce multicolored fruit. That's true. So for instance, porcelain berry will produce these really beautifully colored fruits. Porcelain berry is a really big invasive, especially here in New York City. I know a lot up and down the East Coast. It's a battle. It's a battle against porcelain berry. However, the fruits are very beautiful to see, and they come in these blues, these purples, pinks. You will even see them in like really light colors, almost like white. So yes, they can be very beautiful. But the plant itself isn't, and the flowers aren't rainbows. This is very specific to some of these fruit. And regardless of how pretty the fruit are, I do not recommend growing porcelain berry, especially not outside. This is something that can overtake your yard. It can kill your plants. It can spread into your neighbor's yard and kill their plants. Um, it's not a good plant. So please don't plant these in your gardens. And then sassafras. So sassafras have fruit that are called drupes, if I'm remembering correctly. Drupes, so sassafras albitum, and they, when their fruit are going through the So the process of maturation, so first they start off like that green color, and then they start to darken into this really beautiful, like purple, like dark blue, like indigo almost type of color. And the base, so that's holding the like the petiole and everything that the parts that are holding on, or is it the pedicel? I think it might be the pedicel, is holding these fruit, can also appear to have multicolors. And so it's very, very pretty. But the fruit itself is changing through different stages as it's growing. And this doesn't necessarily mean, again, the leaves aren't rainbows, flowers aren't rainbows. This is the fruit. And it's going through stages, so it's not gonna stay these rainbow colors throughout the entire time. So don't fall for these. And in terms of, so sometimes I have given this class before, like in person and in other situations. And so I always get folks going, wait, I've seen rainbow flowers. So I wanted to make sure, yes, bringing that up. Yes, you might have seen rainbow flowers, right? Bouquets with flowers of all different colors. Now the flower itself isn't, rainbow. And you can't see that some of these, like carnations, there are rainbow carnations, rainbow roses. These are artificially colored. So this is usually done through capillary action. So basically they're cut, and the stems are cut, and then they're put into water with a food coloring. And as they suck up the water at this, usually they're white or like a very light cream color. And once they take up that color, it actually changes the color of their petals. So it's not a naturally occurring thing. With orchids too, you'll see that there's orchids, right, that are neon green and neon pink and neon blue, and they're being sold for like $10. That's those are not natural colors. Those are injected. So there are plants that are being injected. There is also plants like the philodendron pink Congo, where it's a gas, like gas, and things are being introduced to their water for them to create that pink growth, because it's actually depriving. I believe that it works through, it affects like the apical meristem, so where all the plant cells are basically like growing, and it suppresses the creation of chlorophyll or chloroplasts. So then what ends up happening is that it's like depriving that green from expressing itself, so it looks this beautiful shade of pink. But then once you stop giving it access to those chemicals, so people buy it and you bring it home and you're not giving it those chemicals, all of a sudden those pink leaves start to turn green, a really dark, rich green, and people are freaking out, right? And it's because it's completely man-made. It's not a real like rainbow color. Whoops. So Google I almost said research. Google reverse image search. There we go. Is your friend. So if you ever see a plant listing come up and you're like, this is too good to be true, this is very odd, just save it or take a screenshot and put it through Google reverse image search. And it honestly will save you before you make a wrong decision. So for instance, here, a couple flags, red flags, right, with this listing. 400 seeds. That's a lot of seeds. 400 pieces. So that's referring to seeds. Rare blue cherry tomato. So blue is not necessarily a color you would equate with tomatoes. Um, so that's already like, hey, what? Also bonsai. That's another red flag, right? What? It's not that you can't make a tomato bonsai plant. You totally can. But you would have to purposely grow it in a way to make sure that it stays at a small size. So it's not something that's just going to grow into a bonsai. And so $11.45. and they're asking for, they're saying that they're giving you 400 of these. That is no, absolutely not. And so in this case, I took this picture and I put it into reverse image search, and lo and behold, the original image came up. Um, Nothing related to this listing. This picture was just photo manipulated and used for this listing. It's not a real plant. So yeah, it's, Google reverse image search. It's free to use. I highly recommend it. And not only in terms of like plant things, sometimes even, if you're buying things off of Facebook Marketplace and you're unsure about the listing photos, I like to do this just in case, to make sure somebody isn't copying somebody else's listing photos. um, what is, here we go. I keep pressing the progress bar instead of the arrows. Sorry. So how to spot a scam, right? So I mentioned a couple things, red flags that are just in the title, right? Um, but what other things? So one, if you do a Google reverse image search, um, just see if it's a stock photo, right? It's like a photo that you just see repeated online on various listings, or it's taken from maybe a listing that actually looks more legitimate. um, and then sometimes it's the same picture put like 3, 4 times in a row. That also tends to be a red flag. Um, if it's very obvious that it's altered, if you can find the original online, if you can see like, no, this is AI, this is fake, this is actually isn't legitimate, and which is getting harder and harder to tell, right? So it really, it comes to that point where if you didn't have any plant knowledge, like you were a brand new person to houseplants, and let's say you saw that picture on TikTok, for instance, about a pothos flowering, and you had no previous knowledge. I mean, so many people in those comments were saying, I can't wait until mine flowers. Oh, that's so beautiful. I can't wait. Without realizing, one, the leaf structure was completely wrong. That was not a pothos. Number two, the flowers, the type of flower is totally wrong for that family of plants. So that's the Ariaceae family, or also known as like aroids or arums. Um, Totally wrong type of flower. And then third, if you know a little bit more, you're like, wait, but those, that's not something that would necessarily flower at that size at the very least, maybe not even domestically, but like inside someone's house. It would probably have to be outside, but it wouldn't be that tiny. We're talking like it needs to be a substantial plant in order to get to that point. So um, so there's different layers there, right? But it was just very unfortunate. And so some people did catch on and were putting in the comments, that's not real. Like, guys, this is AI generated, not real. Don't fall for it. Um, but there was a lot of people who sincerely thought, wow, that looks like that's beautiful, and I can't wait for my pothos to do that. And so I was like, that I felt so bad because yes, it's very obviously not a real picture. So it's getting more difficult. And I think what, a few days ago they dropped that there's like a new AI video thing that's going to be available. And and people were bringing up very valid points, because people were putting, like, you basically write um there's some cool applications, of course. I think, for people like, with storytelling, like, I was telling Brian, like, I write short stories. I would love to do something like that, right? Because animation would just, that, no, it's way too costly, very time consuming. But imagine if you could put your short story into something like that, and then have like, like a little animation of your short story. Like, I think it could be super cool. But then people were saying, well, it's so realistic, that some people, would have a problem, let's say, telling what's a true video versus an AI generated video, because it was very scary, how realistic it could be. So yeah, there's issues there. Um, but then also things to consider too, right? Another big red flag: the picture is not the same plant, right? Let's say it's saying it's a tomato plant and it's showing you a cactus. Like, that's a big red flag right there. The common name, it's totally not. Very, very different. Also, if there's pictures of different plants in the same listing, so it's saying Monstera seeds, but then the first picture is a Monstera, second picture is a bonsai, third picture is a cactus. uh, another big deterrent. And then also, lack of scientific name tends to be a little suspicious, and or having multiple names kind of listed. So like I'll show you an example of a scam after this, with like several words, and it's more like for the SEO. It's for these keywords to get pinged so that you get that ad in your face when you're searching up a certain term, but it's not what you're looking for. um then of course, there's no like care instructions. It doesn't always have to be on the listing, but if you were to follow up and write to the actual seller and go, hey, I'm really curious, how do you grow them? Can I see your mother plant? And they have nothing to tell you, or they don't grow them themselves. That's also a little bit of a red flag there. Uh, Also, international shipping. So seeds cannot be sold internationally, like shipped internationally, without the right paperwork. So if you're seeing international shipping and they're not asking, for you to pay extra for a sanitary certificate, a phytosanitary certificate, that is very telling as well, because that they should not be doing that legally. Um, and then, keywords. So we mentioned bonsai, but also seeing rare, heirloom has been taken a lot by scammers, unfortunately. Um, Things like mixed lot. That's another one. So there's a couple keywords. Also, investigate pricing. So compare, do some comparison shopping. So if you're seeing, this is too good to be true, try to see what other sellers are selling these seeds for, and try to look on places that just would have a little bit more of a vetting process. So something like a horticulture society, if they have a sales page, or some botanical gardens will sell seeds as well. So try to compare and see, well, how much is this really really worth. So spot the fake. So for instance, Monstera deliciosa seeds, fast splitting leaf. So fast splitting is saying that they will fenestrate, which is when they start to get those holes or splits in the leaf. um I don't know how real that is. That might be a little bit over promising. I mean, hey, it could also be a specific variety that this person has grown, that maybe it starts to split a little faster. That's not impossible. That's totally possible. But with monsteras, for instance, they take about 4 to 5 years to start to mature to the point where they will start to fenestrate. So when you go and buy your plants in like big box stores or at your local plant shop, and they just started to get leaves that are split, that tends to mean that plant is about 4 to 5 years old. That's the average. Now, if maybe somebody started crossing varieties, like, hey, this guy, this monstera I got to fenestrate after only 2 years, and this other one did it in 3 years, and so let's mix them, and that's possible. I can't say I've ever come across one or seen one, like, people discussing this in real life, But it could be the case. So that's not something necessarily discounted, but this is much more realistic. It's $8.95 for 10 to 13 seeds. That is much more realistic. Much more realistic. And the photo is the right type of seed. Um, this is yes, this is a legitimate listing. Now, the fast splitting leaf part, again, has me a little but you're going to get Monstera seeds more than likely. I'm 99% sure that you would get at least Monstera seeds. They might not be fast splitting, but you will get them. Versus the fake one, right? So just look at this title. Palm tree turtle leaves, Monstera variegated seeds, rare tree mixed color. So they're popping, a lot of these words in there that have no relevance to the plant that we're talking about in the listing. But it's very much for these keywords for SEO. So, they want it to be very searchable to pop up if you're looking up these types of terms. And then look at the pricing. It's under $5, $3 shipping for it's saying it's 50 seeds. And then it's coming from China. So a couple flags there. One, we can't be ordering seeds from China, from outside of the United States if you're here in the US, because they will not it legally, we can't do that. They can carry diseases. It could be not the plant that we wanted, and then people plant them, and then it ends up becoming an invasive species and damaging our ecosystem. So it can get very dangerous when ordering outside of the United States. It's not just China. You might get things, from other places too. But it's yes. That's a big red flag, is international. Also, the amount of seeds for that cheap. The title, definitely. And then once you actually see, okay, well, what plant are we talking about again? And it's this variegated Monstera. That is not something that you can just grow from seeds like that. It's just not. You have to get cuttings at this point for a surefire you know variegated plant. So not scam. So just not true. And here's just examples here. So you can see here 99 cents for these. Very obviously the photos have been manipulated. Are there purple succulents? Yeah, there are purple, like tinged succulents, sure. But the only real photo might be the one that's on the top right corner that shows what it might be an echeveria. I think it might be is it von Pearl von Nuremberg or something like that. But that purple one in the middle across surrounded by those green echeveria, that actually might be the real one, and the others no. That's photo manipulated. So don't fall for that. Also 99 cents, and they're calling them flower mini cactus. These aren't cacti. These are succulents. Some of them look like echeveria, some of them might be aeoniums. So they're not cacti. So that's also wrong. And the color is being manipulated here. Also on Wish, you'll see like 100 seeds, for $1 of these types of plants. No, these it's not that some of these plants don't exist, but they would be much more expensive. So it's not there are different plants, and they will cost a lot more than that to get some seeds. So sometimes people will ask, well, then why do I see so many good reviews, right? Under these so-called scam listings. So for instance, with these roses of different colors, and it's saying that you get 200 seeds. mixed, right, with all these gorgeous colors. And here's some examples of those reviews. Well, a lot of these people are, they're prompted to leave a review once it gets delivered. So it gets delivered and then it says leave a review. And so people will say, oh, I got it. The shipping was really fast. But it has nothing to do with the actual plant. Um, some of them could be fake. They could be kind of farmed, what they call like farmed reviews, or these are like, could be bot. It could be people that are getting paid to do this, to make the listing look more legitimate. But a lot of times, the ones that you see where it looks like it might actually be somebody who purchased it, it's more talking about the shipping, and not about, or how excited they are, and not about the actual product itself. So yeah, these roses are not growing this way. That you're not seeing like these rainbow roses and things like that. That's not happening. Um, so yeah, you'll see that. If they actually allowed the other the other reviews to go up, sometimes it will only allow you to review once, right? It won't allow you to do it again. So if you submitted a review saying, oh, great shipping, and then it's 3 months later and you have a bunch of grass in your yard, different types of grass in your yard, and that's not what you meant to grow, you're trying to grow roses, it won't even allow you to leave a follow-up a follow-up review, unfortunately. Now, what happens, right? You already planted them. Um, well, like before this, right? You already planted seeds that you purchased online, and now you're like, oh man, did I get duped? Watch them grow. Look up the type of plant that you purchased, and look, for instance, one of the easiest is what's their clade? Are they a dicot or a monocot? And that's the first thing you're gonna see when they pop up, is how many leaves they have. So if it's a dicot, when it sprouts, it'll have 2 leaves. And if it's a monocot, it'll have 1 leaf. That's one way to see if you're at least on the right track. You're like, okay, at least that looks right. And then keep them indoors. Avoid planting seeds that you're unsure about, right? Outdoors. So try to start them in seed trays, just to, verify that these are the plants that you wanted to grow, before transitioning them into, let's say, larger pots, or transitioning them into your flower beds, just to make sure, especially when you're purchasing these types of seeds where you're not getting them like from a local store, right? You're purchasing them online. There are just so many scams right now. And our ecosystems are already just faltering under the weight of the amount of invasive species that we have. So we don't want to add to that. Definitely not. So don't, and don't like dump non-native seeds just to throw them outside, because it can really cause, we're on the verge of ecological collapse. And we don't need any more. Um, so you might be saying, well, then where do I get my seeds, right? If you're looking, let's say, especially if you're looking for houseplant seeds, well, Etsy can actually, there are some reputable sellers on Etsy, and there are some eBay sellers as well, but you really want to talk to these people. So message them, ask them, hey, can I see pictures of the mother plant? And then take that picture and run it through Google reverse image search. Say, hey, I would love to see how are you germinating them? What have you seen worked? How would you suggest I do this? And just see how are they communicating? Are they speaking about the plants like they actually know what they're talking about? And are they being open and going like, yeah, I mean, I want to sell you my seeds, so I want to tell you how to properly grow them. But if they're evading the questions, or not, not giving you accurate answers, then that's something to like move on to a different seller. And as I mentioned, try to join local groups, or maybe just join their mailing lists, and see if hey, are they having a local event so that I can join and can be connected with people that maybe do actually have the seeds, right? That's another really big possibility that you can absolutely do. And local botanical gardens are great at that. Some recommended sites too. Select Seeds. They have a lot of really cool vines. So, for instance, if you're trying to grow like passion flower vines indoors, they have like cissus, things like that, where some plants that are being sold as house plants, right? Um, Especially vines, they have a really cool selection that I would recommend. Uh, with junk seed, a lot of trees. So some people like to grow trees indoors, and you can do that. Of course, smaller trees, so like citrus trees, things like that. Um, and they actually have a really great selection of trees if you were looking for them. Rareexoticseeds.com is great. Botanical interests as well, especially if you're wanting to grow herbs indoors. So if you're trying to start like a kitchen garden with like chives and cilantro and basil and things like that, Botanical Interests has some really great selection of seeds and varieties. So if you're looking to do that, Seed Man, really good variety, and Plant Fix as well. So these are really great sites that I recommend. I haven't heard anything bad so far, so um, I'm I recommend these. These are other colleagues have recommended them to me, and so far they seem good. Um, Now, if you have your heart set on really, getting into seed germination, like that's something you want to do, well, make sure you just research especially the way to germinate seeds. So not all seeds, as I mentioned, previously today, not all seeds are germinated the same way. So you don't necessarily, it's like, oh, just take the seeds, put them in some seed, potting seed mix, and call it a day. So some species will need very specific ways. Like for instance, with air plants, you actually have to germinate them on cork bark. A lot of air plants, they have to be germinated. Like sometimes it'll actually be in sphagnum moss that's tied to cork bark in order for them to germinate that way so that they can anchor into the cork bark. Um, there are plants like the bat flower, taka, really beautiful plant. It can take up to 6 months to germinate, and it's like you have to have a very specific type of mix. You have to keep it at a very specific humidity, and even after you plant the seeds, it may take up to 6 months before you will actually see any growth. So you want to also be able to set your expectations correctly, right? Because these some of these seeds are not seeds they're gonna germinate like just in a couple days, and it might take a lot of time. Um, so you just have to really do the research, like, okay, what species, what am I supposed to expect, and what's the correct process? Because you also don't want to purchase seeds and then you do it the wrong way, and then you end up, you're out of the money, and then it's, of course, it's really sad too because you really wanted to grow them, and let's say you did it wrong, so you lost the seeds. They might develop mold and they're not viable anymore, so you can't even give it like a second try. So you don't want to do that. um in some cases, even if you do have, you start them from seeds, it'll take a really long time. So especially cacti. Cacti are very slow growing. So sometimes it'll be super long before you could even, consider having a plant that's mature enough to even come to flower, because cacti will flower for you. It may take a really long time. So if you're thinking about germinating seeds, patience, a lot of patience. And then, consider that you might have to invest in tools if you are hoping to germinate seeds. And we're even talking, houseplant seeds too. So like seed trays with like the little domes on top. Um, you might end up having to get like a drip tray, because you want to keep, a lot of seeds have to be kept evenly moist. So they need so you put what is called like a drip tray. So you put like your seed tray into a bigger tray, and then that tray is what you water. And so then they basically are continuously getting bottom watered. There's grow lights too. Remember that with grow lights, the blue wavelength light is what promotes growth. So a lot of seedlings, tend to really need a light that has a nice amount of blue light. Red light is more, what red wave light is more for plants that are already at that stage where you want to start to trigger flowering and fruiting. Um, so if that's not, so that wouldn't be the right type of light to give a seedling. Uh, it's better to just get full spectrum light because it has everything. But if you have specific types of wavelength lights, that's another consideration. You go, oh no, I only have red wavelength lights. Well, you would have to either get a full spectrum light or a light that has a little bit more, the blue wavelengths of light for that. So, take that into consideration. So yeah, I mean, I hope that was helpful. It was just a little overview. I'm gonna look here at the comments in a second and take questions. Um, but yeah, it was just I know a lot of people right now. We're about to, at least here in the northern hemisphere, we're approaching spring. It's right around the corner, and I'm seeing more and more people posting seed starting content, and I kind of wanted to kind of remind folks that seed scams are a thing, unfortunately. It's a very unfortunate reality. And I wanted just to make sure to kind of share a little bit of that issue with you, so that folks that are really into, starting plants and they want to start some house plants, maybe they want to start some plants out in their garden, um, that they kind of are at least aware of this issue. Whoops, there we go. There we go. So, if there is an urban garden plant swap connection spreadsheet. So if you're interested, if you want to post cuttings, things that you want to kind of see if anybody would be interested in, like, feel free to add that to this list, and then people can connect with you about, getting some and offering what they have up to trade. So definitely feel free to screenshot or use this QR code and go ahead and make some connections with folks. And then, of course, this class is free. I'm always keeping it free. But if you ever would be interested in offering a tip, definitely it's always appreciated. So folks had asked me to put my Venmo. So here is my Venmo. Of course, that's always appreciated. And thank you so much again for everyone that does tip. It's always deeply appreciated. So thank you. Thank you so much. It helps me continue um, offering these, and I really love hanging out with everyone. Thank you so much. Um, Patreon is also live. I haven't been doing that much on Patreon, but something definitely I'm hoping with this upcoming year to put a little bit more focus on, especially because I have a lot of stuff coming up with the New York Botanical Garden. So I'm going to be doing some behind the scenes tours and things that I'm going to be coordinating with them as to the dates. And so I'm going to be doing a lot of filming. And so I'm excited. I'll be putting some content together with the garden. Why does it keep doing that? I keep touching the progress bar, so it takes me to the beginning. And then there's the Amazon shopping list. These are non-affiliate, so I don't get anything from this. But I put together a shopping list of items that I have personally purchased myself and used and liked. So they're in there. There's also like just a few items that also students have recommended that are in here as well. So check it out. Again, they're non-affiliate links, so I don't get any percentage or anything. It's just a list of recommended products, so things that I've used and liked. And so I posted it up because sometimes folks ask, oh, well, where'd you find that? A lot of it is found on Amazon. But yeah, and if you ever wanted to reach out, info@urbangarden.eco, Instagram, urbangarden.eco, and the website is urbangarden.eco. I'm hoping to actually, I'm going to be working on doing some really cool things with my website too. So, I'm going to be creating like a members area and things. So that's, hoping 2024 it is going to be a lot of content creation for Urban Garden, hoping. So I'm hoping my health will let me keep up. It's been a rough start to this year, so I'm hoping this isn't what the rest of 2024 is going to look like. Um, yeah, I think I didn't I had I didn't expect COVID. I thought it was oh well, I started feeling better, so I thought, hey, I'm good. And then I started feeling bad again. So even though, the tests are coming out negative, but it looks like it had like a another hit to my body that I wasn't expecting. So hoping that I I'm on an upward trajectory and I'm not gonna just keep feeling sick for a lot longer than I expected. Um, but yeah, but thank you so much, everyone. Let me check here. Um, Gabby, great question. Where does the scion come from if it can't grow on its own? Great question. Yes. So, a lot of these are grown, they are grown, but then they will only grow to a certain point where then they will no longer be able to sustain themselves. So usually they're fed either like it's depending on what type. So sometimes some of these do have green on them and they can grow. Some of these are actually uh pulled from other scions, right, as pups, and then are propagated like that. Some of these are being supplemented with nutrition that basically offsets what they're unable to create, which is what essentially keeps them alive. And but with outside of those conditions, they wouldn't be able to survive. So yeah, so it's different in different processes for different types of scions, but yeah, they start to grow and then they're however it is that they are cultivated, but they just get to a certain point where they would need help. They wouldn't be able to continue the growth on their own. And so then they're purposely grown that way so that then they can attach them to some rootstock and do that. Now, there are other plants that are grafted. I mean, trees, that's fruit trees, especially, are always, a lot of them are grafted. Cherry trees, apple trees. And so it's not always necessarily a bad thing, like with the scion. Oh, it's taking from the rootstock, but um, like with apple trees, for instance, like different types of fruit trees, they are those leaves are creating sugars and then are helping the rootstock out. So that is a better relationship versus that of the scion, like the cactus scion, with some type of cactus rootstock, or sometimes it's some other type of succulent, like a euphorbia or something like that. Where yeah, it doesn't work that way. It's a one way street. A Aguilar, is it true to use garlic or bananas or water with salt to use to propagate and grow orchids? I have never heard of using garlic or banana water with salt. I have never heard that. An issue with salt, though, is salt does pull water away. Um, so I would be worried about that actually removing moisture from the seeds and possibly burning the seeds, especially garlic. I've never heard of that use personally. Now, banana water, I have heard used especially for different types of ferns, like staghorn ferns. So staghorn ferns, um, the is it Platycerus? Platycerus, I think, is the genus. Um, I have seen a lot of those where, it's not doing well. It's on its last days. And submerging it in banana water, and then giving it like a really good soak, and it gives it a lot of potassium. And then that ends up really helping with the um replenish kind of that nutritional deficiency, and you see these gorgeous staghorn ferns. I have colleagues that have tried banana water on staghorn ferns with success. So I have heard of banana water with staghorn ferns, but not with orchids. So a lot of orchids really require a very specific way of germinating, and a lot of them may also require some type of relationship with a fungi in order to propagate and to germinate. So yeah, so I'm not sure about that. George, there's a Germany-based seed company, Rare Palm Seed. They have so many varieties of seed that I want to try, not just palm, but the shipment is $95. Does it mean that it will enter the country legally? Um, yes. Yes. In regards to that, if the shipment is $95, that is very possible that that includes the proper paperwork. So, though it's not that you can't get plants internationally, you can, but it will come in the listing and say the shipping is this much because we need the proper phytosanitary certificate. There might be like some paperwork that is going to be necessary for when it goes through the customs process. They will check, the plant, make sure it was properly cleaned as well. So a lot of plants that are incoming, they can't have like a speck of soil on them. They have to be completely clean. The roots have to be bare. It has to be like very specifically packed so that it's very surefire way that there's no kind of organisms hitching a ride with your shipment. And yes, and with paperwork. So being that expensive, it's very possible that yes, that is a price that's like all inclusive. Now, I would say to verify with them that the necessary paperwork is included with that pricing, just to be sure. Because if you're not getting a phytosanitary certificate, if there's no paperwork, it's not legal. So this is the case with animals too. So there is something that's called brown boxing. And so this is very popular. Like I have tarantulas, so this is something that's very popular. I'm not going to say popular is the wrong word, but this is something discussed, I should say, in the spider community, where there's this thing called brown boxing where people will ship spiders, whether that's jumping spiders, whether that's tarantulas, or like common actual true spiders. They will ship them outside of the United States to the United States without declaring that there's an animal in the box, without any visible clues that there's an animal in the box, and will not have any proper paperwork. And then people will receive them and go, oh, yay, I have my tarantula, without realizing that it was actually shipped to them illegally and that they could get in a lot of trouble and the person who shipped them could get in a lot of trouble. So like for instance, I'm not sure if you had heard this story before, but I personally, a few years ago in like 2017, 2018, I ordered a Euphorbia millie from eBay. Yeah, eBay for $8. That was it. It was $8. There was no additional charge, nothing. It didn't say where it was coming from. So I assumed it was just, coming from within the US. I didn't think about it. I didn't get it for a while, and I kept messaging the seller, and they kept telling me it was on its way. And then I get it a few weeks later, and I receive it, and it's like shriveled. Um, and I'm like, oh, what? Okay, so I'm upset. But then I get a note that's posted on my mailbox that says, that Fish and Wildlife is trying to contact me. And so I contacted them back, and I said, "Hi, like, why, hello? What, how can I help you?" And basically they said, "Well, you ordered a plant, Euphorbia milli, from it came from Indonesia, and that it was illegally brought into the country, and we need to take it." And I said, "Well, it was dead. Like, it was legitimately shriveled up and dead." And so then they were like, "Oh, okay, no, that's fine." But I had to show them the listing. I had to prove that there was no location on the listing. And I didn't know that it was coming from Indonesia. It was $8. There was no like additional fee or anything. And sure enough, it arrived, with nothing indicating on it. But it had been flagged. And so yeah, so I got like the scare of my life because I was like, well, it was dead. Um, but then I had to show like all the proof that I was not aware, my communications with the seller. Um, because yeah, that was that was a thing that I didn't know. I didn't know that can actually happen. And so be very careful when you're ordering, and make sure that if it's international, that they are giving you the right paperwork, because you can get in trouble. You can get fined. So be very careful. Rose is propagated, yes. Yes, vegetative propagation to maintain the desirable characteristics, but rose breeders do grow from rose hips to cultivate new cultivars. Exactly. Yes. Um, and this is, for those of you who might be familiar with apple seeds, right? It's the same with a lot of fruit varieties. With apples, if you want like a specific variety of apple, that it's usually that branch is grafted onto a new tree. It's not you don't take those seeds won't necessarily grow that type of apple. They will grow different varieties. And so just keep that in mind, because yeah, you might go, "Oh yeah, I love Honey Crisp apples. I'm gonna take these seeds and I'm gonna grow them." And you end up with really sour apples that might just be good for apple cider. And um yeah. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Barbara, do you have a place for roses? Oh, for buying roses. No, no. I would say to look more so at, really, for that. I would say like try to connect with your local botanical gardens and your local horticultural societies, because especially more local, they will probably, yeah, I haven't, oh gosh, last time I was growing roses when I worked on a farm and we were growing roses. But yeah, no, I haven't grown roses in a very long time. So no, I'm so sorry. I don't have any sellers that I can think of. Um, oh, Suzanne, yes, seed transplanted. Yes, oh, absolutely. Um, and Sally, not relating to seedlings, do you have a recording on a true and tried way to get rid of fungus gnats? I might. I might. But I will tell you, Sally, a couple tried it. Well, the best way, honestly, is to let the plant dry out like fully. But the issue with that is depending on the plant, right? Because some plants don't want to dry out fully. So let's say it's like a peace lily. It definitely doesn't want to dry out fully. Um, with fungus gnats, it's a multi-pronged approach. So, for plants that have to stay moist, I would recommend nematodes. So nematodes that will feed on fungus gnat larvae. Um, Another is I have a like the gnat catcher. So it's like a little fan. It's bladeless. It just looks like a circle. They are not very good flyers. so I will keep it next to the plant that has fungus gnats. And as soon as they are like approaching the plant, they basically get sucked up into this little vacuum. Um, so that's one. Two, they're also very attracted to yellow sticky traps. So there are little yellow sticky traps you can purchase and pop into your plant that they will get stuck on. Those are for the adults, of course. So it's like a multi-pronged, but let's say you don't, it's a plant that you're gonna let dry out, right? Let's say it's like a pothos and you just want to let that dry out. Like you want to get it completely dry because once it's completely dry, the larva can't survive. Um, so you want to, yeah, that's a big one. You can also put a layer of diatomaceous earth. It's like a white powder on top, right? And let it completely dry. If you water the plant again, you will have to replenish that powder right on top, but that won't let anything emerge from your soil. So as the larvae mature, they'll die as they're trying to escape. And the adults will die as soon as they land. It will kill them. So it's not poisonous to people. It's very fine dust though. So if you do have asthma, you don't want to like pop open it because then it's like a cloud of smoke and it might irritate your throat. So if you are opening it, open it very gingerly, very not like a popcorn bag, just very, very slowly and apply it like that. But diatomaceous earth is great with sticky traps, getting a little gnat fan. Honestly, drying out is probably the easiest. But yeah, for plants that need to stay moist, I would say a combination of like the sticky trap, nematodes, and even maybe potentially adding springtails. My throat. Hold on one second. Um, so adding springtails to your soil. So you can purchase springtail cultures. You can add them to plants that need to stay moist all the time. So this is especially if you have like even a terrarium setup, things like that. You want to have springtails because they're not going to harm your plant, but they will eat any fungus, and that's what the fungus gnats are feeding on. So there's food. So that's why you have the fungus gnats. If you have the springtails, they will outcompete because they will start to eat all the fungus, and now there's no food for fungus gnats, which means the larva can't survive, and then eventually the adults that you already have die off, and the larva can't mature. But yeah, so they're uh it's a little bit. There's some stuff to do. Oh, Gabby, the Philadelphia show, March 2nd to 10th. I'll see if that's even a possibility. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. And thank you, Sin. Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, and Suzanne, some apple trees are grafted with multiple species. Yes, yes, very true. There can be like several varieties on one tree, which is so cool. Um, George, so if it's illegal, the authority might confiscate the shipment or even come to your door. Yes, absolutely. So, if it's not shipped legally, you might just not receive the plant because it was confiscated. Sometimes if there is like that seller might be flagged without you knowing, of course. If you receive the shipment, it kind of like gets back to them and they're like, oh, a shipment was made, the data arrived that a shipment arrived from this seller to this location, and then they will show up to your door. Yes. Yes, it can happen. So yes, they can absolutely either or. You either receive a notice, somebody might actually legitimately ring your doorbell, um, or they might confiscate your plant, and then you're out the money because sometimes the seller won't give you a refund. So also check the fine print in listings. So sometimes they write it in there, but it's like buried. But yeah. Thanks, Deanna. Thank you so much. You're very welcome, Sally. Um, oh, Sin. Monrovia Nursery out in California is a very good rose nursery. Our nursery here in the Denver area carries huge selection of Monrovia Nursery roses after early May. That's amazing. And I used to live in their town right next door to Monrovia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Monrovia, and the nursery. But it moved out of the LA area up to Central California. Oh wow, that is so cool. I mean, roses are absolutely amazing. Um, yeah, that's oh man, there's some amazing varieties. Last summer I went to the it's very specific rose garden inside of the New York Botanical Garden, and there was some roses. I wow, colors, varieties I'd never heard of, never seen before. Absolutely amazing. Um, absolutely amazing. But awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Whoa, 4 growing fields. That's crazy. Oh man, that would be really cool to I love nurseries too that allow folks like, tours and things because it's always a great excuse to see more plants. Oh, 2 on the East Coast. Oh, that's awesome. That's more doable. I've never gone out to California. I do want to go. I do want to go out west. So I think like the farthest I've gone in that direction from New York City is I've gone like up and down the East Coast, but yeah, I think Colorado has been like the farthest I've gone that way. So I definitely want to go. I want to go to Oregon, definitely, California, um, Washington State. I definitely want to go there, especially to see like old growth forests and like the redwoods in California. So yeah. Thank you, George, so much for sharing this information. Truly appreciate it. Yes, 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 Terry, absolutely. Yes. I am actually gonna take a nap after this. My throat, I really feel like run down, honestly. Like my energy, yeah. Uh it's yeah. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Seriously, it's always awesome to hop on here and connect with you. I hope this was enjoyable. And yeah, I'll see you next week. And please stay healthy and stay safe. All right. Have a great one, everyone. Bye for now. Bye.